All right, I think we are locked and loaded. You want to tap on the... There you go.
You thought we were all supposed to kiss, I know.
All right, I think I think everybody's here. So can everybody hear me in the back? That sun's going to be a little annoying. Yes, so welcome. I'm Dr. Ben Sweeney. I've met, I think, 95% of you guys that are here, and for the few I haven't, welcome. So this is our Healthy to 100 event, and really, by a show of hands, who even really wants to live to 100 years old? Great. 102, and that's what everybody says, yes, if. And if what? If I feel good, if I have my function, if I'm able to get around or get up and down the stairs, if my family doesn't have to take care of me. I think most of us would want that if we could be healthy, right? So it's really about health span more than it is lifespan. It's about adding health to our years, not even necessarily years to our life. But I think we can do both if we follow the right game plan. So come on in, guys. Hey, buddy. Good to see you. So I had this little joke it's kind of a joke, I guess, but I want to die young. I want to die young as late as possible. That's the goal. I want to live really long, and I want to die really, really quick. That's the name of the game. So I remember my grandfather used to say, he said, you know, if I get old and somebody has to take care of me, he said, just put a pillow over my head. Like, just put me out of my misery. And we all laughed, and that is not the way that it played out. So he ended up going to the nursing home, and he was running around naked and terrorizing the staff, and my dad had to go up there every single day for like 2 years. So we all have these grandiose ideas that, you know, if I get old, you just, you know, put me out of my misery, but that's not really the reality of how it works. So it's really about how we live. So we have this thing called our marginal decade. You ever heard the marginal decade? It's basically the last 10 years of our life, and how do we want to live those out? Like, nobody wants to be in a wheelchair, nursing home, having to be bathed by a stranger while you stare at like a tray full of pills. But that's kind of the reality of how it plays out, because who do we never think that's going to happen to? Me, until it does, right? And we don't like to think about our mortality. We don't even really like to think about our health, much less our mortality and how we're going to die. But the statistics are pretty clear. 1 out of 1 Americans, death affects 1 out of 1 Americans. So literally, we're all going to die. Hopefully we get to spend eternity in heaven. And I know when it comes to speaking about eternity, this time we have on this mortal coil is but a snowflake on a river. It's just a snapshot when it comes to eternity. But I'm here to tell you, we get to choose how we live, and we largely get to choose how we die. And that's really what tonight is all about. So in terms of like where we're at as a country and as a culture and Middle Tennessee and where we're at, when it comes to our health, it's really pretty pathetic. When you look across other industrialized nations, we have the highest rates of almost every chronic disease you can name, from cancer to heart disease to diabetes to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia. We really have more of those diseases in total and per capita here than anywhere else in the world. Our life expectancy, for the first time ever, this generation of kids, my kids growing up, is expected to be the first generation that's not going to outlive their parents. So over recorded history, lifespans have generally gotten longer and longer and longer. Well, this generation of kids is actually, their lifespans are getting shorter. So we're not only getting sicker and sicker, but it's actually affecting our length of life as well. So really, when it comes to all this, and there's a lot of misinformation. I hate that word because I think it was abused during COVID. But there's a ton of misinformation when it comes to diet and exercise and nutrition and gut health and what supplements to take. So I guess really it comes down to, who do you trust with your health? Because do you trust the government when it comes to your health and your well-being, aka Medicare? I mean, it can't even deliver the mail on time, much less keep us healthy. Or the FDA, do they have your best interest at heart? What does the FDA say? Is it the Food Drug Administration, I think? Is that what that stands for? Did you realize that 45% 45% of the FDA's annual budget comes directly from the drug companies. So half of their budget comes from the companies they're supposed to be monitoring and policing. So do you think there's any room for conflict of interest when it comes to that? Or the CDC, what's that, the Centers for Deception and Corruption, I think? Or is it deceit and cronyism? One of the two. But those companies, those organizations, those alphabet letter organizations do not have our best interest at heart. And also the pharmaceutical industries. Do they care? What do they care about?
Going to the bank.
Money. The one and only thing they care about is money. And then the other thing would be the insurance companies. Because I used to think the insurance companies would be motivated to have healthy people, because that means they would have to pay less and less out for healthcare claims. It's exactly the opposite. So there's a thing in the health insurance industry called the 80-20 rule, and this was all part of the Affordable Care Act. So 80% of the money that the insurance companies take in, they have to give back to people for surgeries and for drugs and for procedures, and they get to keep the 20% for profit and administrative costs. So I used to think they were incentivized to spend less money, but actually the opposite is true, because the more money they spend, the more they can collect, and the more they spend, that 20% piece of the pie that they get gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So they'd rather pay out $10 million versus $1 million because that 20% profit share gets bigger and bigger. So these companies are not looking out for our best interest. And the reality with this too, I guess the bottom line is, there's no money in healthy people and there's no money in dead people. The only money in the current healthcare system is in people who are sick, who are suffering, who need surgeries, who have to take medications, who see themselves as a victim, who are scared, misinformed. That's where the money is at in the healthcare system. I've been doing this, September will be 20 years. I've figured out, I've got the solution to the healthcare crisis. I figured it out. It took all these years. I think I've got it figured out. The solution to the healthcare crisis is we need more people, less sick. I know it's mind-blowing. I need to probably patent that. But if we get more people less sick, more people needing less drugs, needing less surgeries, that are healthier, more fit, that sleep better, have better energy, that's how we put the drug companies out of business. That's how we need less of those services. And that's really what it comes down to. And by the way, too, this is not to bash on doctors and nurses. Some medical doctors, some of my dearest friends are medical doctors. Actually, the neighbor on either side of me are both medical physicians, and they're wonderful people. They're wonderful, awesome people. The problem lies in the hospital administration C-suite, where all the policies are made and all the spreadsheets are formed. That's where the decisions are really being made. And then you look at the nurses, especially during COVID. We have nurses on the front line that literally risk their lives going in, trying to save people. Those are amazing people, but you look at the pharmaceutical, the back end in the profit and loss statements, it's really all about money and profit and how do we generate as much money as we can, because the sicker you are and the more scared you are and the more surgeries and drugs you need, the better customer you are. And that's really how this all plays out. So I'm trying to take notes because I'm changing all this stuff up. So the reality is we have sick care. We don't have health care, and a lot of times there's no health or care in the healthcare system. But can drugs do some good for some people some of the time? Yes. Nobody doubts that whatsoever. My daughter, 3 years ago now, she blew out her knee, so she blew out her ACL, and everybody always asks, well, how did she do it? And a good parent would be able to answer that question, but the honest answer is I'm not really sure. I think she probably had it for a couple months, few months, we really didn't know, and then finally we realized we got an MRI and her ACL and her meniscus were both torn. So I didn't rub like frankincense oil on her knee or put crystals on it or do adjustments to her knee. I took her to the best surgeon that we could find down in Alabama, and he did a great surgery, repaired her knee, and it's been amazing. And then my sister, my sister's type 1 diabetic, she's also a nurse, and thank God for those evil drug companies because they make her insulin, and that actually keeps her alive. So I wouldn't have a sister if I didn't have drug companies that made her drugs. So for certain things, they do a tremendous amount of good, and I think that's where we get the confusion, because we think if they do so good at saving our life, they must be really, really good at keeping us healthy. But the goal of the medical system is not to keep you healthy or get you healthy. The goal of the medical system is to keep you alive and to save your life. And can they do a good job of that? Yes. But in terms of getting you and keeping you healthy, that system is completely impotent. So who's responsible for your health? We are. So who has to be the expert when it comes to our health? We do. Or we have no chance. Like if we leave our health to other people, other experts, other entities, other organizations, then we have no chance. So if we're not educated in the preservation and maintenance of our health, we really don't have any chance of getting healthy. So that's what tonight's about, to empower you, to get you healthy, and to give you the tools to actually build your own health on your own. So let's get into this. So with this, there's what we call the triad of health. And these are three systems, three parts of your body, three key areas that we have to keep healthy in order to stay healthy and to avoid disease and sickness. And it's kind of like a three-legged stool. So if you have a three-legged stool, you're missing one of those legs, that stool's not going to stand up. So those are your nervous system, and we'll talk about how that works, gut health, metabolic flexibility, and particularly how that affects your hormones. And they all communicate and work with each other. So your nervous system talks to your hormones talk to your gut talks back to your nervous system. They all intermingle with each other, and we're going to talk about how to break those down individually so that you can keep those healthy. So the nervous system is kind of the start to this. Do you guys know what the master control organ is in the body? Brain. I do this, I kind of gave it away because I showed you the picture, but I'll do that without showing the picture, and almost everybody in the room says heart. Now the heart's important, but the heart doesn't do anything unless the brain tells it to do so. So where does the best doctor in the world live?
Great physician.
You're supposed to, yeah, in heaven. The second best is right across the street. No, I'm kidding. You're supposed to say in your brain. So you have the best doctor in the world living inside your brain. So in your brain, you have a power that God put in you to beat your heart, breathe air in your lungs, heal cuts on your hand, make your kidneys work, digest food. Your brain is literally making electricity or information, and it's sending information in the form of electricity down your spinal cord and then out your nerves into every organ, cell, and tissue of your body. So if you cut the nerve, if I was to cut your head off, what do you think would happen to the rest of the body? There's a thing they did in 12th century France called the guillotine. And the reason they did that, because it worked 100% of the time. It was fail-safe. But if I was to cut the nerve to your heart, what do you think would happen to your heart? Same thing. Instead of cutting the nerve, what if you had a car wreck when you were in your 20s, caused a whiplash, and it caused those vertebrae to shift out of position and start irritating the nerves in your neck that also control your heart? What's slowly happening to the heart? And when would you want to know about that? When you start having heart palpitations or chest pain, or if your kid had that car wreck, when would you want them to know about it? Now, the confusing thing about this is only 6% of that nervous system detects pain. So the vast majority of what your nervous system does has nothing to do with what you can actually feel. So there's really three key components. You guys remember Christopher Reeve? Like the real Superman?
Yes.
Not this Joker they have nowadays, but the real Superman. You remember how he got injured?
Horse.
Yep, fell off the horse. So he fell off the horse, his hands kind of got tangled, and he basically chin planted. So he went down into the dirt like that. He had a burst fracture at C1, so that very top bone in his neck burst. But the injury that he sustained was a 1 centimeter bruise on the top part of his spinal cord. That was it. He had a bruise on his spinal cord that you could have covered up with the tip of your pinky. But what did it do to his body? Paralyzed. He had to have a respirator. He had to be in a wheelchair because he couldn't move his limbs. He also had to have a respirator to keep his lungs breathing. He had to have a pacemaker to keep his heart beating. They had to literally push and manipulate his bowels to make his bowels move. His immune system shut down. His hair fell out, and he died at about 9 years of a streptococcal infection, something that we would have fought pretty easily or with a round of antibiotics. Now, the trick with him, could you have given him the right smoothie recipe or the right cocktail of drugs or the best exercise program, what would be the only way to get him back to health? You would have to restore his brain's ability to communicate with his body. So that's really what chiropractic care is all about. And we see people all the time that say, you know, I came in for my neck or back pain and now my sinuses are better. I don't get those sinus infections I used to 2 or 3 times a year. Or I came in with lower back problems and now I don't deal with constipation or IBS. And people say, well, how could that be connected? Or you fixed my IBS. Every time I hear that, it makes me kind of cringe because I don't fix anything. There's really nothing that we do other than removing the interference to your body's own healing potential, allowing your brain to communicate with the rest of your body. Now, the question most people say, well, if that's true, or if that's so important, then why has who never told me that before? My doctor, or my aunt, or my grandma, or my friend, or my neighbor. Like, why has no one ever told me that your nervous system is the master control system, nothing else in the body works without it, and you have to keep that system working healthy in order for you to be healthy. This is the side view of the neck. See that curve kind of facing this way? Everybody hold your hand like this. There was a neurosurgeon that did this in front of a bunch of other neurosurgeons, and he won the Nobel Prize for this, so any chance I get to do this, I do it because I sound smart. But that's the curve in your neck, and your head sits on top of that curve, and when you have the right curve, you have a shock absorber, and then that mushy part of your hand would be your spinal cord. So when you have the right curve, your spinal cord is loose and relaxed, but almost every adult, and now most kids, that we take x-rays of, their curve has gone completely straight. So they've lost 100%, or in some cases they've lost more than 100% of that curve. So it's stretching, it's deteriorating the size, shape, and the function of the spinal cord. So if I damage the spinal cord, what's the likelihood your brain's going to be able to communicate properly with the body? It's almost like you're stepping on the water hose that your brain is using to communicate with the body. So a lot of people come in for neck pain or headaches or back pain or leg pain, but really those things are just the symptom. They're just your body's way of communicating with you that something is out of whack and something's not right. And it takes, if you look at those nerves, it takes about the weight of a dime. There was a researcher at the University of Colorado, Dr. Chung Ha Soo. He took little bunny rabbits and he cut them open and he put little weights on their nerves, and he found it took the weight of a dime on one of those nerves to cause about 60% loss of function. So you don't have to have a pinched nerve or a compressed nerve or a cut nerve. You can almost just lightly touch it or put pressure on it, and it affects the way that body communicates with itself. So the key with this, there's 4 key phases when people come in with chiropractic care and keeping the nervous system healthy. The first phase is we want to get you out of pain. And the way we do that is we try to get those vertebrae moving better and into a little bit better alignment. And some people, they're never going to get it perfect because, and I say this kind of jokingly, I say, you know, ma'am, you're 50 years too late for your first adjustment. Like, you should have been here like after you had the car wreck 50 years ago. But the reality is some people have degeneration. So we got to get the area moving and into a better alignment. That's the first stage. The second stage is you want to get it into a more stable position so that it doesn't just revert right back. And a lot of that we do with the home care and the stretches and the rehab. We started using a software program. It's called Chiro Up. We started it a couple months ago. If you haven't gotten to take advantage of this yet, please stop us when next time you're in the office, and we will send you very detailed and specific strengthening and stabilization exercises and stretches based on your particular condition. And if you've been in a few times and I haven't mentioned it, this is my apology to you. But we can actually send you the exact, based on your diagnosis and what area is going wrong, we can send you exercises and stretches and stabilization movements to actually stabilize that particular part of your spine. And you can click on it and watch the videos. It makes it very, very simple. So we have to get you into a better alignment. We have to get it more stable until it's in a little healthier position. And the final stage is we have to get it stronger. Or the third stage, we have to get it stronger. Now, with the strengthening part of it, that comes down to the muscles around your spine that actually support your spine. And exercise, too, plays into these other categories like your hormones. It's been said that muscle mass is actually the key to healthy longevity. So a lot of people kind of cringe when they hear me say that. Like, I don't want to lift weights. I don't want to do that. I'm not the kind of person that lifts weights. I just don't like to do that kind of stuff. But if you want to have healthy longevity, if you want to keep your spine healthy and strong and stable, and if you want to be able to get off the toilet by yourself when you're 80 or get up and down a flight of stairs by yourself without help, you're going to have to keep the muscle strong. There's a thing called sarcopenia. Have you ever heard of sarcopenia? It's a natural process that begins around age 40 to 50 where we lose 1 to 2% of our muscle mass every single year, just as the process of aging goes. So we have to work to build muscle over time, and that doesn't have to look like CrossFit. For some people, it looks more like yoga or Pilates or something more simple, but you could start slow, build up, but we all at some point have to get to where we're actually lifting and moving weight and load against resistance. And we have trainers that come in the office that we can refer you to, or we can help you with some simple versions of that. But just to kind of plant that seed, we all have to be lifting and moving weight. And the more muscle you have, the more capacity you have to store glucose. So when we eat those sugary meals and the things that we're not supposed to eat, then our muscles are what actually store that excess glucose. So that's how you can get away with eating cheesecake or having some breakfast or having some dessert or having, a few drinks, cocktails out with the friends, and it doesn't destroy your overall health. So that's the nervous system. Oh, and then the final stage, so the first stage is alignment, get you out of pain, get things moving a little better. Second stage would be stability. Third stage is strengthening, and then the final stage would be maintenance. And people say, well, why do I have to maintain it? It's like, how long do you have to keep brushing your teeth? How long do you need to keep changing your oil? So you're still, especially with your spine, you're still going to be sitting in a chair too much. We all do. There were no chairs in the Garden of Eden. Like we weren't designed to be sitting in chairs all day. We're still going to have slips and falls. We're still going to have posture. And a lot of times too, like the spinal cord works, the spinal column, which is made up of those vertebrae, it works a lot like your fuse box in your house. So we've got that fuse box in the house, probably in the laundry room, where the power from the road comes into the fuse box and gets distributed to all the living room, dining room, kitchen, basement. So that's essentially what the spinal column functions as. So when you overload the fuse box with power, you tend to blow a fuse, very similar to when your spine moves out of alignment to protect the whole system. One area will give under the stress. So yes, we can keep throwing the fuses and switches and strengthening, but at some point we have to deal with the stress that's coming into the system. And that comes down to emotions and spiritual and deep breathing and exercise and all those other things that help us to manage and mitigate stress. So a healthy gut. What do you think of when you hear healthy gut? What's that? Stomach. Anybody else? Well, like the gut itself, when you hear the gut, what do you think of? Stomach. That's what everybody thinks. But actually your gut starts here and it ends down here. Like it's a big long tube. And if we were to, I know we're having dinner here, so I don't want to get graphic, but if we were to take this and like reach in and pull all of your gut out of your body and spread it out into one cell layer, like one layer thick, it would be about the size of a tennis court. So your gut is actually one big, long, spread out, single layer thick barrier that keeps your food that you're eating from getting mixed up into your bloodstream. And it works a lot like a screen door. You seen like the screen door in the house? It's designed to keep the bugs out, like the oxygen in. That's essentially what our gut layer does. So what a lot of people have is a condition called leaky gut. If anybody wants to Google that, what percentage of Americans have leaky gut? It's about 90%. So about 90% of Americans are walking around with a perforated leaky gut, kind of like a kid threw the baseball through the screen door. So you get that big hole in the screen door and now the bugs can get through. And then the medical approach to that is you just take Raid or Black Flag and you run around spraying and killing all the bugs with antibiotics versus sealing the gut, repairing it so that nothing can get through. That's why when you hear a lot of like food allergies, people have food allergies, they get their food allergy test done, you'll see a lot of weird things on those food allergy tests. Like I'm allergic to cantaloupe and romaine lettuce and some weird watermelon or whatever else. Like, really, is it the watermelon? Or do you have a leaky gut and you ate a piece of watermelon that passed through the leaky gut, got into your bloodstream, and your immune system recognized it and attacked it and created a defense mechanism for that particular particle? And now forever on, your body's going to be sensitive to that particular food. So it's not the individual foods that we need to work to keep eliminating, because you can whittle that down to nothing in some people. It's figuring out what's causing that leaky gut. So that's the trick. And then with this, when you heal the gut, mood will improve, hormone balance improves, reduced inflammation and pain, stronger immune system, better energy, less food sensitivities, better deal with stress, anxiety, and depression. Do you realize that 70% of your immune system is actually in your gut? They call it the second brain, because not only is your immune system in your gut, but it's communicating back and forth with your brain 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the bacteria that live in our gut are actually determining how we assimilate, break down, and manage our food. So when they look at these cultures that are more native, like live in Africa or live in cultures that don't eat all the processed food that we eat, they literally find that they have thousands more strain types of bacteria than we have in the US. So we're literally, our guts are literally dying, and we know that about 73% of our entire food supply is ultra-processed food. That was a study that found in 2022. Ultra-processed food makes up about 73% of our entire food supply, which is basically garbage. I mean, stuff that we wouldn't feed to our dogs, but we eat it every single day. And I hear it all the time, like, no, Timmy, don't give that soda and chips to the dog. That'll make him sick. That's for you and your friends. And to the point that we laugh about that, right? And it's murdering children, but we laugh about it, right? Lower risk of disease, reduce seasonal allergies. Anyone deal with seasonal allergies in Nashville? That's usually like 90% of the population. Most of that starts in the gut. Because what happens is your gut communicates with your immune system to release a chemical called histamine. And when you release the proper amount of histamine, you have no symptoms, you have no watery eyes, you have no itchy anything, no swelling. Your body you just cruise on like there's no issue. But if you release too much histamine and overreaction to histamine, then what do you have to take? You have to take an antihistamine. So we're taking these drugs to suppress our body's reaction to the things that are happening in our environment. And again, I can't fault people if they're miserable and they can't see or breathe and they're just in discomfort, but we're not getting to the root cause of why it's happening in the first place. Improved cognitive function, improved absorption of critical nutrients. That's just a small list. So in the office, we have a 6-week gut repair and detox program. So you basically get like it's like 2 shopping bags of supplements, and there's different phases to it. The first phase is the immune support phase. Then you go into the intestinal repair phase, and then you have a liver cleanse phase toward the end of those. I think it's something that every American should at least do once in their life, because very unlikely that we've made it through our entire life taking no antibiotics, exposed to no pesticides, no toxins, no heavy metals, no chemicals, that it can actually destroy or hurt our gut. And there's a nutrition plan that goes along with that too. So if you're interested in that, typically it's $16.47, and if you do, since you're here, we save you 20%, so it's $13.17 if you decide you want to do that, or if you want to meet and chat more about the details of that. But most people during that process will lose weight, they'll feel better, and amazing. And then the other big piece to this puzzle too is when you repair the gut, it reduces what's called inflammation. Do you guys know what diseases are linked to inflammation? What did she say, all of them? Yeah, that's right. Basically, arthritis, allergies, asthma, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, every chronic disease, neurodegenerative diseases, every chronic disease that we worry about is either caused by or linked to inflammation. So that's, if you can stop the inflammation, you're actually reversing or dealing with the underlying cause of those diseases. The other piece to this is this metabolic flexibility. Has anyone ever heard of metabolic flexibility? So it's basically your body's ability to use fuel, how it uses fuel for energy, essentially. So our bodies are hardwired to either use glucose or sugar for fuel or fat for fuel, which is also known as ketones. So you can use fat for fuel or you can use sugar for fuel, or you can be metabolically flexible where you can use a little bit of both at any given time. The problem is most people are pegged to where they're essentially sugar burners only. And there was a study out of the University of North Carolina in 2018. They found that 12% of Americans have what's called a healthy metabolism, where you're metabolically flexible, so you can use fat or sugar, depending on what the demands are at the time. So that means 88% of us are walking around with a broken, impaired metabolism. And that's where people get like hangry, where if they skip a meal, they get hungry, and then they have to eat every 3 to 4 hours because their body's always craving sugar and carbohydrates for fuel because they can't effectively use ketones for fuel. And the other thing with this, a big piece of this puzzle is a little thing called cancer. So virtually every cancer has an individual signature. And the signature with virtually every type of cancer, it's what's called an obligate glucose metabolizer, which means cancer cells can only use sugar for fuel. They use a process called fermentation. They cannot use a process called oxidative phosphorylation, where they use oxygen for fuel or fat or ketones for fuel. So in the prevention of cancer or in the treatment of it as well, getting into therapeutic ketosis, where you're starving the cancer cells of that sugar that they want. And here's a case in point. When you go to your oncologist, what test do they run to find out where your cancer is? PET? It's a PET scan, right? You heard of a PET scan. So a PET scan, what they do is they inject you with radiographic dextrose. It's basically a sugar molecule with a radiographic tag on it. And they wait about 45 minutes and they put you in a scanner and they want to find out where all that sugar is collecting, because the cancer and the tumor loves sugar. It will collect at the tumor site. That's how they diagnose your cancer. But then you go to the oncology office, you see the people getting their chemo in the little chairs, and they're giving you orange juice and they're giving you candy bowls to give you some sweet treats and Nutri-Grain bars and all these things that basically feed the cancer while they're giving you chemotherapy to fight the cancer. And I've had this conversation multiple times with oncologists, and they just don't want to hear it. Like, they just don't want to hear that there actually could be something dietary that's driving these explosive rates of cancers. Because what are we told cancer is caused by? What's the common conception of why do we get cancer? Most people say genetics. Right? If you have the genes for cancer, then you're going to get cancer. If you don't have the genes, then you're doing good. Do you know that about 60% of women that have all the breast cancer genes, the BRCA1 and 2, all the cancer genes, 60% of those women will never develop breast cancer. So if your genes cause the cancer, then how do those women never get cancer? And it's through a process called epigenetics. So genetics by themselves account for about 4% of chronic disease. So 4% of cancer, 4% of dementia, 4% of cardiovascular disease and diabetes, 4% of those diseases are actually directly caused by genetics. 96% of those are caused by lifestyle, our environment, and a thing called epigenetics. And you should look that up. If you haven't looked at epigenetics, I would highly recommend you look into that. But it's called control above the genome. It's your body's ability to switch genes on and off based on what you do to your body. Because if you look at Okinawans, like people that live in those blue zone cultures, when they look at their genetic profile, they have all the genes for cancer, they have all the genes for heart disease and diabetes, but yet they don't get those diseases. So you're not a victim of your genes. Because I hear it all the time. They say, well, my mom and dad had terrible genes and they died of cancer in their 50s, so I just carpe diem, right? Seize the day, baby. I just live while I'm here. And then you have other people that say, you know, my mom and dad lived to 100 and they had great genes. So I've got the golden ticket. Well, the reality is you can out-lifestyle your genes almost every day of the week. So you're not a victim of your genes. As long as you believe you're a victim of your genes, then you have no chance. So we have to realize that what we do and the health of the gut plays a vital role in the expression of our overall genes. So we use this mnemonic. Some of you that have heard me speak before, you've probably heard this before, but it's called turning off your GPS. So there's a category of foods that most people are eating that out of that GP&S category, that if you're eating those, then your GPS is set toward cancer and heart disease and diabetes, obesity, and early death, right? So the G, do you guys know what the G is? Grains. Gluten would be part of that, but grains is kind of more the umbrella term, and gluten would be part of the grain picture. And grains are tricky. Number one, because we're told to eat like 11 servings of them every day. That ridiculous food pyramid that I think they use the plate now, which is only slightly less ridiculous. But that food pyramid, you should take that and flip it completely upside down. Like take it, all the stuff they tell you not to eat at the top, except for the sugar and sweets that are at the top, but the fat and the oils and the meat, things like that, flip that upside down and start eating in the opposite direction of that food pyramid. Because those grains, which are bread, pasta, cereal, crackers, chips, pretzels, cookies, bagels, muffins, pastries, oatmeal, yes, oatmeal, processed corn products. But I thought oatmeal was healthy. Anyone ever heard that one?
Oh, yeah.
Oatmeal is peasant food. Like that's what they used to feed the peasants when they were trying to keep the population alive. It contains phytic acid, it's loaded with oxalates, it's high glycemic, a lot of it contains gluten. So oatmeal is not a health food, and it does not reverse your diabetes the way, was it Wilford Brimley used to say on TV? Like that's all marketing, that's all a complete myth. And the other big one with this is that processed corn, like your corn-based processed products. Basically, if you eat it, if you put it in your mouth and chew on it, and it turns into mush, that mush is sugar. So the amylase that's in your saliva will break down that starchy carbohydrate and turn it into a sugar before it ever basically gets into your stomach. So all those foods are in that category, and they turn completely to sugar, and they trigger that condition called inflammation. Do you guys know what the P stands for? Processed. Somebody said potatoes. Potatoes are kind of, it depends on what your goals are. So if you're trying to get healthy, like if you're on this kind of, I'm trying to accelerate my health journey, I would avoid below ground veggies for at least a short period of time because they are high glycemic. It's not if the worst thing you ate in an entire day was a potato, that's a pretty good day. So don't hear me say those are terrible. It just depends on where you're at in your journey. But P stands for processed. It's really processed seed oils, and then also processed food. So if you get your food in a bag that's handed to you through a window, that's going to be a processed food, almost guaranteed. So we know that's obvious, like McDonald's and Doritos and that kind of thing. But the biggest thing are those processed seed oils. So like your sunflower oil and your safflower oil and your cottonseed oil and your vegetable oils. And another biggie is canola oil. You ever heard that canola oil is healthy for you? That's the one. He's got the American Heart Association seal of approval on the bottle of the canola oil. Do you guys know where canola oil comes from? It stands for Canadian oil low acid. And it's actually genetically modified rapeseed oil, which sounds bad enough. But they basically take rapeseed and they compress them through machinery into this nasty sludge, which is so disgusting and toxic. They have to bleach it with hexane because it's just a big gob of mess. And then they have to deodorize it because it smells so horrible. So by the time it gets to your grocery store shelf, it's already essentially omega-6 inflammatory rancid trans fat oil. So and the problem is, like, if you go to like Whole Foods salad bar, if you go to their bar and you read the little ingredients that are in all those foods that they have canola oil in almost every single one of those products. So what oil should we use? Olive is good. So at your low temperatures, you want to use like olive oil and butter. Can I get an amen for butter? Amen, amen for butter. Good rule of thumb is if your great-grandmother wouldn't eat it or didn't even know it existed, you probably shouldn't eat it either. So butter or lard, if you have access to that, not Crisco, but butter and then, or ghee or clarified butter, olive oil at low temperatures, and at high temperatures, you want to stick to like avocado oil and coconut oil. They have a very high flash temperature, they're very stable at high temperatures, and they taste amazing, they don't break down, they're actually anti-inflammatory versus pro-inflammatory. So avocado and coconut oil at high temperatures, and your butter and olive oil at your lower temperatures. Any questions on that? Okay. And then the last one is sugar. That's have a good night. I know, everybody's mad. Yeah, good old-fashioned sugar. So sugar, how do I say this? Sugar is just so, we're so inundated with sugar. Like almost any packaged food you're going to get, they add sugar to bread, they add sugar to pasta, they definitely add it to pasta sauce. So almost every packaged food we get is completely loaded with sugar. We used to eat about roughly 10 pounds of sugar per person per year in the early 1900s. Do you know what that number is now?
4 times.
What's that? Four times? It's higher.
Oh.
It's about 120 pounds. We eat the weight of a human in sugar per person every single year in this country. And people say, well, I don't eat a lot of sugar. I hear it all the time. I say, well, keep me a food diary for a week. And then I look at it and I go, that's sugar, 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 sugar. Like there's just so much in our food. So really what we recommend you do is just do meat, veggies, and fruit. The primary constituent of your food plan should be basically meat, veggies, and fruit. And when I say meat, we're talking beef, good old-fashioned grass-fed steak is one of the healthiest things you can actually eat. And I know this sounds contrary to everything everyone's been told, that meat causes, what does meat cause? Tell me. Cancer, heart disease, you want to avoid red meat. The red meat study that they still sometimes quote, which is ridiculous. The red meat study was a 6-month retrospective study where they gave people a questionnaire and they said, in the last 6 months, ma'am, how many times have you eaten red meat? And you're supposed to remember in 6 months how many times you ate red meat. Then you'd write that down. They'd say, well, those people had more cancer and more heart disease and more diabetes. The flimsiest study I've ever seen done. And you know what they counted as red meat? McDonald's cheeseburger, fries, and a Coke, and lasagna all counted as red meat. So was it the red meat, or was it the French fries and the strawberry shake, or was it the pasta or the pasta sauce? It's just, it's a ridiculous study on its face. Now, when it comes to meat, the health of the animal actually does make a big difference. So if you have like a grass-fed hamburger versus a conventional hamburger, well, I always call them the Hillsborough Road cows. You ever driven down Hillsborough Road? You see those cows out in the field. They look so happy and they're healthy and they're eating grass and their babies are walking along. They're out in the sunshine and they're all in a good mood and they're eating like food God designed them to eat. That's a healthy cow. That's a healthy steak. That's a healthy burger. That's a healthy product. It has great levels of conjugated linoleic acid. It has more choline. The omega-6 to 3 ratio is almost perfect and ideal. But if you eat a conventional cow, which is raised in a feedlot, which is pumped full of hormones and antibiotics, they feed them corn all day. And when you give an animal corn all day long, guess what they get?
Fat.
They get fat and they get sick. So they have to give them hormones, antibiotics, tons of vaccines, and they literally, to get those bulls or those cows to slaughter, all they have to do is get them up on their feet. You realize that? Like they don't have to be healthy. They just have to be able to get them to their feet to get them into your McDonald's cheeseburger, your McDonald's hamburger. So they'll literally lift them up on a forklift, get them up on their feet, and then chuck them on the truck, and then now you've got your hamburger. So those foods, obviously, it's a completely different animal. So no one distinguishes between grass-fed, free-range, organic, versus like your conventional hormones and antibiotics standing in a pen all day. So when it comes to chicken, same thing. If the chicken was out in the grass eating grub worms and living the way it's supposed to, that's a healthy chicken sandwich. That's a healthy chicken tender, right? Depending on what you put the breading. But if it's a conventional, do you know what they put those chicken coops? I had a picture of this in my other talk, but they'll put the chicken coop over the tilapia farm. You ever see that? The tilapia pond. So they'll position the chicken coop right on top of the tilapia pond, so that when the chickens poop, they feed the tilapia. And by the way, too, tilapia is as close to frankenfish as you could ever imagine. It's not even like a real
Manila Bay. Exactly that.
Manila Bay.
Yes.
The same thing. Right. And yeah. So when we're talking about fish, because fish is in that meat category, you're looking for wild caught, ideally, and deep water, smaller the better. So the deeper the water and the smaller the fish is, the better. And the reason for that is because the bigger fish eat the smaller fish, which eat the smaller fish. So they bioaccumulate all the mercury and the PCBs and all the toxins that are in those smaller fish. So the smaller the better. And I can't stand sardines and mackerel, and I would rather I'll just take my fish oil, right? It's like I'll take the supplement because I can't eat fishy fish. But when I go on vacation, I'll eat my body weight in cod, or not cod, but grouper. I love grouper. I can eat grouper all day long. So when you're making like this switch to organic, when you're trying to go more organic, you always want to do your meat first. Your meat and your dairy. If you're doing dairy, do your meat and your dairy organic, free range, healthy first before you start worrying about your veggies and your fruits. Do you know why that would be? It's the lifespan. So the lifespan of a tomato, which was sprayed with pesticide, is a matter of, a month or two? And the lifespan of a cow who's been fed corn and antibiotics and all the other toxins is years. So those things bioaccumulate those poisons over time. The problem is it's not super easy to find, especially if you're eating out. If you're eating out, the same food truck goes to McDonald's as goes to J. Alexander's, as probably parks around the back here and gives you whatever you're going to eat today, to be honest. So if you're eating out, it's hard to find some of that stuff. We use a company called Wild Pastures. If you've ever heard of Wild Pastures, they ship us our meat once a month. They ship it over. And it comes in a big box. We chuck it in the freezer, and it's got our chicken and our beef and our we do some fish sometimes, but not often. So we just get it from you almost have to know the source. That's really the key with that. And then when it comes to your veggies and your fruits, there's a thing called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. Has anyone ever heard of that? There's some foods that you always want to try to get organic, some fruits and veggies you always want to get organic, and there's other ones that you don't really want to waste your money necessarily, like bananas. Don't worry about buying organic bananas. It's a big fat waste of money, unless you just want to waste the money. Because, and here's the way to think about it, if they spray the pesticide on a part of the fruit or veggie that it lands on that you peel off and don't eat, then don't worry about getting that organic. Because you're peeling it off. You're not going to eat, unless you're eating the outside of the banana, then you've got other issues. But if you're like melons, lemons, limes, oranges, like if you're peeling it off and you're not eating the outside, then don't waste your money with organic. But like apples, you always want to try to get those organic if you can. Like, because those, you're eating the outside skin of that fruit. Does that make sense? The problem is at the grocery store, because the organic or the non-organic apple is big and fat and shiny and crispy, and it costs like half the price of the organic apple, which looks like it's been kicked down the grocery aisle and it's all bruised. So if we're spending money on things that make us healthier, is that an investment or is that an expense? Investment. Do we believe that? Or do we just know that's the right answer? I struggle with that sometimes too.
Why do you like green apples best?
Oh yeah, good point.
Less sugar.
Less sugar, that's right. So he asked, why do we like green apples better than red? And I love a big Honeycrisp red organic apple. I could eat 20 of those a day. But ideally, your low glycemic fruits are your berries. So anything that ends in berry. Lemon or berries, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries. My daughter used to call them doodleberries, blackberries. All those berries, those are great. And then your lemons, limes, avocados, and Granny Smith apples. Those are your low glycemic, higher fiber, less inflammatory, more nutrient dense fruits. Now your melons and your citrus and your banana are the ones that are much higher in sugar. And again, if the worst thing you ate in an entire day was a banana, that's not a bad day, right?
More green than older.
That's right. That's exactly right. So any questions on that? Nutrition-wise? With dairy, I try to minimize because I just don't do very well with dairy. Number one, especially I do a lot of cheese, but I don't like milk. Because we're the only species of animal that keeps drinking milk after they're weaned from their mother. I don't know if you realize that or not. Like bunny rabbits don't keep drinking milk once they're weaned from their mother. Kitty cats will drink it if you put it in like a little dish for them. Even cows don't keep drinking milk. And we're not even drinking the same species of milk. Like we're drinking an animal that's 500 pounds that's meant to put like 100 pounds on a calf in a year, where mother's milk is putting, 10 pounds on a baby in a year? So the proteins are bigger. It's just a completely different substance. So if you're going to do milk, the best kind of milk is mother's milk. But if mom is unavailable, then that was a joke. I've tried. I'm never going to. I've been told so many times I'm not funny, but I'm just not going to stop. I can't. So mother's milk is best. Raw milk would be the second best. Anyone ever had raw milk? Raw milk? And I like raw milk. I like my stuff. Grew up on it, right? Straight out of the teat, right? But raw, it's illegal to drink raw milk, right? You got to do like a drug deal in the parking lot to get your raw milk. You got to meet your dealer.
But you want to make sure the cow is free of any problems too.
Correct. So you got to know the farmer. Yep. So there's that process. Because what they'll do, and raw milk is fantastic. You just pick out the hair and the dust, and it tastes. You've never noticed it. It's fantastic. But the problem with milk is they take that product that's designed to put 100 pounds on a calf within a year, and they pasteurize it, which heats it up to 168 degrees. When you heat something that's alive to 168 degrees, guess what it does? Kills it, and it denatures the proteins. It ruins the calcium. It makes the calcium almost completely unabsorbable when you pasteurize cow's milk. And they homogenize it, which they pass it through a little screen or filter, which makes the proteins much, much smaller so they can pass through that leaky gut, trigger inflammation. So really, conventional milk is one of the worst things we can eat. But if you look on the American Diabetic Association website, guess what their recommended breakfast plan is? You get you some whole grain cereal, get you some tube or skim milk is usually what they recommend, and then a glass of orange juice. Like, I couldn't design a better diet to cause diabetes than the one.
How about almond milk, coconut milk? How would you rate that?
Probably similar. Like, we do a little bit of almond milk in our. I have a little bit of issue with the amount of water they have to use to grow almond trees. Like, it's an enormous amount of water. It's like, I think it's close to a gallon of water per almond that they produce. It's an obscene amount of water that they use to produce almonds. But I like almond milk. I like coconut milk. Not a big fan of soy milk. Soy turns little boys into little girls and little girls into cancer patients. That's the old saying with that, because it's a xenoestrogen. So soy that's not fermented soy is great. So if you do like tempeh or miso or natto, like the gooey, nasty stuff they give you at the Japanese restaurant, those are great. But if you're doing like your processed soy, like tofu and your soy milk, soy cheese, this soy meat thing that they have now, or those Impossible Burger things that they're trying to sell to people. Has anyone ever eaten the Impossible Burger? You have? What do you think? You liked it?
I don't eat hamburgers much, but I have.
You have? By the way, any vegans in the room? I don't want to offend anybody. No vegans? I love vegans. I eat them all the time. Like, I love cows. I love deer. Like, I eat vegans all the time. A little thing on veganism, by the way, there's a couple problems in my opinion with that. Veganism works really good for the short term because you're getting rid of all this stuff. And that's why all these different diets work so well. So keto or Mediterranean diet or paleo or carnivore or South Beach diet, those all work not because of what you're eating, it's because of what you're not eating. Because all those diets have one thing in common. They eliminate basically all of those things. That's why they work. But with veganism, you're not getting adequate amounts of B12, your adequate amounts of choline, so you're going to run into deficiency diseases when it gets 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the road, because that's going to start to catch up with people. And the other issue with veganism, because it's all about animal rights and keeping animals healthy, which animals matter? Have you ever plowed a soybean field? You know how many squirrels and chipmunks you murder when you plow a soybean field? And not to mention the landfowl and the crickets and the grasshoppers and all the other animals that get just literally destroyed by that process. So when you're doing it for animal rights, like which animal really counts? Is it just the big fluffy ones that we like and Bambi? Or is it the ones that we don't, that are uglier and not as pretty? So that's a little touch on veganism. Questions? Anyone want to leave or hit me?
Really like pasta, okay? Italian pasta only has 2 ingredients, flour and water.
Yep, from Italy.
From Italy.
Correct.
Yes. And that's all. You look at the same pasta in this country.
Yeah, it's 50 ingredients.
So that's
Correct.
That's all I eat. And it Rose, R-A-O, pasta.
Mhm, yep.
From Italy, and it only has 2 ingredients. I've watched the movie on Smithsonian of how they make pasta over in, and it's from the Bertolli factory over there.
Yep.
Okay, so I looked at Bertolli pasta here, and it's made here. It's got that many ingredients.
Mhm.
Where the one from there only has just 2.
Well, yeah, I mean, even the McDonald's in the Norwegian countries, the portion sizes are smaller, and they don't allow half of the ingredients that we allow here.
But
And
the
I,
other thing is, we're talking about beef, at the factory on the Saturday, when they have there's a family there that sells beef, that they raise right here in,
Mhm.
right.
yeah, those are all good. If you can buy local and you know the farmer and how they're raised, that's the way to do it, ideally. And I can't count the number of patients that we have that are severely gluten intolerant. They're full-blown celiac. But then they'll go to Italy and they'll eat pasta and croissants and just blow it out, drink wine, and they lose weight and they feel amazing, and they come back here and they start eating healthy again, gluten-free, and all their symptoms come back and they gain all the weight back in no time. So it's not, you can't really, sadly, you can't really trust what's on a lot of the labels. So the best thing is eat food that doesn't have labels. Like steak doesn't really have a label. Apples don't really have labels. Cucumbers don't really have labels. So if you eat foods that don't even have a label, you're even doing better with that. So we have if you're looking to reboot the metabolic function and reset the metabolic process, we have a 6-week metabolic reset program. It's called ChiroThin. So it's a 6-week process where we take you through 3 different phases. The first phase is a loading phase. So we give you the dietary guidelines and what to eat, what not to eat. We give you the drops and then the supplements to take with that. And you take that on the front end, you do a loading phase for 2 days. And that's really probably the most important phase. So you're going to load, and then you're going to lose, and then you're going to lock in that current basal metabolic rate. So it's changing your BMR. You want to hear of your BMR? It's your basal metabolic rate. It's how many calories you burn per day doing nothing. That's why people will say, I can lose 5 pounds, but then I just kind of get stuck. Or I lose 5 pounds, I gain it right back. Because you have what's called a basal metabolic rate, where your body, hey, I need a few more minutes.
Okay.
I need about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you. So anyway, that helps to improve. So you do a 2-day loading phase, which you're going to eat about 5,000 calories a day for 2 days. That sounds like a big party, but I promise you it's not. So most people are like, how do I get 5,000 calories? And we give you, because
Probably do it every day anyway.
well, a lot of people do. But some people don't eat that many calories and they still kind of get stuck. So you have to increase that internal furnace of burning calories, and we do it with the drops and the supplements, and then we drop the bottom out of it on day 3, and it's a low-ish calorie. It's not super low, but it's about 1,000 to 1,200 calories, where it's meat, veggies, and fruit, and we show you exactly what to eat. You take the drops. Most men or most women lose about 22 pounds is the average for women, and of course men it's about 35 pounds, over those 6 weeks. I know it's a man's world, Shelley. I'm sorry. It's not fair, but you guys are the stronger gender, right? That's why we need you more. Yes, Vicki?
Well, I just want to put a little note in here. We've got a friend, many years, when he traveled, anyway, and he was a medical person. He was always doing chemical, working with that kind of stuff. And he told Chuck one time when we were at this conference, and he said, you guys, anything that you look on a label, and that's, you just reminded me that, he said, you don't ever want to eat or drink anything that ends in ate or ite.
Yeah.
Like, and I can't think of one right now, but
Like nitrite or nitrate. Yep, those are all the processed. Yep,
they're all processed
they're all bad.
and they're all bad.
So the big key with this,
That's the way to look at the labels. If it's eights and ites, I don't
no eights, no ites. So we want to improve insulin sensitivity, and that's the thing too, is more insulin equals more death. The more insulin you have to use over the course of your lifetime, the more at risk you are of chronic disease. So you want less insulin in the system as much as possible, and that helps to balance and regulate that, eliminates inflammation, and then improves metabolic flexibility. And then typically that's 1097, and then for the people that are here today, we save you 20%. So it's 877 for that. And we walk you through it. We meet with you once a week, go through your food diary, we weigh you, do your measurements, and kind of handhold you through that process. This is my little secret ingredient for my coffee every morning. So can I get an amen for coffee? Heck yeah. If they tell me cancer or coffee causes cancer, I'm just going to in one ear out the other. So I do coffee with those nut pods. So it's basically no sugar. You get your sweetener made from almond and coconut. And then the other one is this product called allulose. Have anyone ever heard of allulose? So allulose is a non-nutritive sugar. It's sweet, but it doesn't have any caloric effect. And it's actually been shown to stimulate the release of the GLP-1 receptor. It stimulates the GLP-1 receptor. You heard of a thing called semaglutide or Ozempic? That's the same thing. Or Wegovy is the other version of that. So those are basically your they're GLP-1 agonists. Ozempic is probably the most common one. The problem with those drugs, because you hear a lot of people on those drugs and on those medications, it costs about $250 a week to be on those medications because insurance doesn't cover it unless you're diabetic. Those drugs, typically, if you were to lose 20 pounds, you would want about 15 pounds of that to be fat, and then 5 pounds of that, 25% of it, to be about muscle, connective tissue, a little bit of bone if you had to. So you want most of your weight loss to be fat. The problem with this GLP-1 agonist in semaglutide and Ozempic is about 66% of the weight loss is actually bone, muscle, and connective tissue. So you're getting thinner, but you're actually getting fatter. I know that's hard to reckon, but what it slows down that transit time of the food getting through your intestines. It curbs your cravings, but you're going to lose tons of muscle in the process. So if you know people that are on those medications, they have to be weight training. Even to offset the loss of muscle mass, that's where you see like this Ozempic face, where the people look like their face is melting off their bodies, and it's really, really hard to ever get that back. And guess what happens when those people stop taking those medications? Right back, and it skyrockets. And then they're right back where they started, and also they've created a lot of metabolic issues, and their gut's a mess. So highly discourage people from doing those. But allulose is one that can also enhance satiety hormones, manages blood glucose, it helps to mitigate metabolic syndrome, and it's actually been shown to reduce cardiovascular risk factors. So 0 side effects, you put it in your coffee, sweetens it up, good to go.
Where do you buy it?
You can buy it I get mine off Amazon.
You don't have it in stores?
I haven't really looked lately. I've just been getting,
Whole source.
yeah, whole source, allulose, or wholesome.
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 Just drink your coffee black.
I do, well, it's got that creamer in it, so it's kind of lightly, I know, I'm kind of a wimp, I'm
So
sorry.
could you use that other for to sweeten your tea?
Tea, anything.
So it's
You
like
can,
in substitution of sugar.
you can. She gave me a couple bags of like stuff you can cook with instead of using sugar. You can use it in cookies and cookies with almond flour. Like you can still eat like snacks and treats and pastries as long as you use different ingredients.
Right.
So here's what tests. These are the tests I think everybody needs to have. Cervical and lumbar x-rays, because we want to know what those nerves that are leaving the neck and the back and the spine are doing and how they control the body. Most of you guys have had those, but those are critically important. Functional tests, these are things that all of us should be able to do way into our later ages. So that's a one-legged stand. You should be able to stand on one leg and do that for 30 seconds without any kind of balancing issues, holding on. Some of you guys are in the neuropathy program, so you're getting there. A dead hang, that's where you basically hang from a bar. For men, or for women, it should be about 30 seconds, and for men, it should be about a minute. And these are kind of baseline. It could be more than that, should be more than that, but those are your baselines. 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, a 1-mile jog, chair stand, which means you can actually get out of a chair without having to hold on or push or use your hands, and then doing a 1-minute plank where you hold on like a push-up position. You can hold that for a minute. And some people have to start with 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and build their way up. Because that's what all these drug company studies, when they say we took 1,000 healthy subjects and we tested them with XYZ drug. Were they healthy? Does healthy mean they could do 5 chin-ups and they could do 10 push-ups and jog for a mile without stopping? Or does it mean that they just didn't have the disease that drug was meant to treat? So we have to redefine healthy in the medical world just means you don't have the disease. Well, healthy really means that you're functioning and your body's working right and your gut is healthy and your nervous system's firing properly. That's really what healthy means. And then when your blood, these are the typical tests that we all need to have. So lipids, most people get their lipids test done. That's pretty common. They'll tell you, yeah, your cholesterol was high, so we're going to put you on a statin drug. I don't have time to unpack all that because they're bringing the food out. But lipids, by the way, too, with statin drugs, just real quick, you really need to do your research if you're on a statin drug. Like everybody that's on a statin, if you're taking it for what's called primary prevention, which means you're trying to prevent your first heart attack or your first stroke or your first cardiovascular event, then you're going to get about a 1 in 114 chance that it's going to benefit you. There's a thing called a number needed to treat, which is how many people you have to treat in order to get people to prevent that disease or condition that you're preventing. So the NNT number for statin drugs for primary prevention is 114. That means 113 people will have 0 benefit. 1 person will prevent a cardiovascular event taking that medication. And then you get about a 35% risk of having severe side effects. 10% of people get what's called rhabdomyolysis, which is breakdown of muscle tissue. And what's your heart made out of? Muscle. So you're destroying the muscle you're trying to protect by taking the statin. So anyway, we can break that down if you want. Your fasting glucose should be between 85 to 99. Most people are well over 100, and their doctor said, well, you're fine, you're not diabetic. Nonsense. Like, we don't want to be fine, we want to be healthy. And then your A1C should be below 5.3. Vitamin D levels should be between 70 to 90. You want to have their vitamin D levels tested? The range for vitamin D in the medical world is between 30 and 100. So as long as you're above 30, they say you're fine. 30 is the cutoff for rickets. So as long as and rickets is a bone softening disease because you're so critically low in vitamin D. You want those numbers to be about 70 to 90. And where do we get our vitamin D from? Sunshine. But what are we told to avoid in the summertime? Sunshine. Right. So we're hunter-gatherers that are supposed to avoid the sunshine, right? I wish I could get into skin cancer because that's a whole other issue. Fasting insulin. Has anyone ever had their fasting insulin drawn by their traditional medical doctor? Fasting insulin? Okay, good. That's rare that they'll draw that test. Occasionally they do, but most of the time they will not. Homocysteine, which is a cardiovascular risk factor, should be below 7. Your C-reactive protein, or CRP, which is it's an indicator of systemic inflammation, which inflammation causes what diseases? Everything. So how important is it to know your C-reactive protein? That should be below 1. That's a critical marker. Calcium score should be as close to 0 as possible. And there's a test called a genetic methylation test that we can actually do in the office, where we test your genes don't cause your diseases, but your genes can determine how you methylate and break down food. You can't take crude oil out of the ground and stick it into your car engine. It has to be processed and refined. You can't eat a cheeseburger and use it in your body the way that you ate it. Your body has to break it down and use it in the way that's processed. So there's a thing called methylation. It's how your body breaks down nutrients to be used by the body. There's a thing called MTHFR and COMT. There's different genetic SNPs that we get from mom and dad that determine how well we break down foods and what nutrient deficiencies we're likely to have. So that's a one-time test. You get it one time in your life. You never have to repeat it. And it tells you exactly what your genetic blueprint is for the absorption of nutrients. Cool. So again, nervous system, gut health, hormones, metabolic flexibility. Some of the warning signs, again, these are just signs that your body's malfunctioning. So those are like allergies, headaches, menstrual irregularity, high blood pressure, depression. When you get those, if you go to your doctor with one of those, anything on that list, what are they going to give you? Give you a pill every single time. Do they ever dig and get to the root cause, or 2 pills, right? Because now you're taking drugs for your high blood pressure, and now you're getting dizziness, so you get another drug for that. Go right ahead. Again, those are warning signs. Those are not the problems. Those are just signs. Your body's inborn, God-given mechanism to tell you that something's out of balance. This is my family here. So I put that on there to you need to really identify, or we all need to identify what our big why is. Like, why do we want to be healthy? Like, people say, I want to be healthy because I want to feel good. Well, why do you want to feel good? I want to have less pain. Why do you want to have less pain? And for most people, they want to be healthy not because of what they can experience or what's going on with them. It's because what it does to the people around them. When my wife was sick, I've told this story many times, that my wife was bedridden for about 2.5 years. She had a condition called POTS, where she literally, every time she stood up out of a chair, her heart rate would go from 60 beats a minute to like 150 beats a minute just standing out of a chair. So it's like fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and migraines and IBS and anxiety and depression. And we took her to Vanderbilt, which is considered the experts worldwide in her condition. And guess what they gave her? A pill. And that didn't work, so they gave her another pill. And then that didn't work, so when we took her back the 3rd time, they gave her an antidepressant. Because if we can't fix your problem, then you must be crazy, right? It can't be us and our lack of tools and skills and ability to fix the underlying problem. It must be your problem because you have to be crazy. Because we're the experts. And put her on Zoloft. That lasted for about 2 weeks. She had suicidal ideation for the first time ever, which was not, luckily didn't amount to anything. And she got down to 98 pounds. At 5'8", 98 pounds. So she was dying, essentially. So it was ripping her out of that system and figuring out what the underlying metabolic process, how do we fix her gut, how do we fix her hormones, what's wrong with her nervous system, like how do we fine tune that? And by implementing the things that we've talked about, that's how we got her healthy, and that's how we got that little man. So I got a 17-year-old and a 3-year-old, so please keep us in your prayers. And it's amazing and crazy all at the same time. Some of the new services we have, we can treat conditions like chronic pain, neuropathy, neck and back pain, migraines, headaches, diabetes, obesity, blood pressure, arthritis issues, allergies, knee pain, osteoarthritis. And then we have gut and detox solutions, arthritis, joint, hip, and knee, shoulder pain. We use regenerative medicine now, so we have access to stem cells. I had stem cells done in my left shoulder and my right knee. It'll be 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in September, and it's the closest thing to the fountain of youth that I've ever experienced. Like, I couldn't kneel on my knee, I couldn't run, and now I played basketball this morning. So it's like a stinking brand new knee. Same thing with my shoulder. I could barely get it over my head. So it allows your body to heal and regenerate by giving it those potent stem cells that have not differentiated or become anything else. You inject them into the shoulder or the hip or the knee, and your body can actually repair cartilage and meniscus or whatever the tissue needs. Class 4 laser therapy, shockwave, which most of you guys probably hate, that you've used before. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, decompression, inflammation, and metabolic health. So most of you guys that have been with us for a long time, you're probably unaware of some of the new things we have. So if you have questions, we'd love to talk to you about your condition and what things we can offer. And then here's some free things you can do. If you want to do this over 12 weeks, first morning sun while grounded. So every morning, get out, take your shoes off, go stand in the dirt, and then stare at the sun as it comes up over the horizon. Directly at the sun. As much as your optometrist might yell at you, I don't care, but you stare directly at the sun for 10 minutes as it's coming up over the horizon. And what that does, it stimulates the little cells inside the eye, which actually resets your melatonin cycle. 16 hours later, you'll get a surge of melatonin, a natural surge of melatonin, to actually help you sleep and reset those sleep cycles. And when you're grounding, you're offloading electrons into the earth. You're basically getting energy from the earth. Because God designed us to walk barefoot in the grass or on the dirt, not in shoes on concrete. Like that's not, we're never in contact with the earth, and we're suffering for it. PMR in the morning, which I call that prayer, meditation, and reading. So every morning I get up and do my reading. I do the Bible app and Jesus Calling and something for Proverbs, and then do a little meditation with my eyes closed, and I do some reading of whatever topic I'm reading that day. Spend 20 minutes with the Lord and with myself every morning. And then water half your body weight in ounces per day, and then I highly recommend adding electrolytes to that water, because it doesn't matter how much water you drink, it matters how much gets into your cells. And that comes down to mainly potassium, magnesium, and sodium. Box breathing, that's where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds. It's like a box. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and then hold for 4. And do 4 of those, preferably 4 times a day. Eat meat, veggies, fruit, and then do the intermittent fasting. I didn't get really time to talk about intermittent fasting, but that's condensing your food eating window to a 6 or 8 hour window. So eat all your food in like a 6 or 8 hour window. For me, I do 1 p.m. to about 7 or 8 p.m. every day. So I eat my breakfast at 1 p.m. and I eat my dinner or my last meal at like 8 p.m., 7 or 8. And it allows me to kind of condense. The problem is I have to really be aggressive with protein. Like if I'm going to get I'm going to get about 200 grams of protein a day, which everybody needs about a gram of protein per pound of body weight per day. Almost everybody in America is far undernourished when it comes to protein. We need way more protein than we could ever imagine that we would need. So we have to have it for amino acids and for our immune system to repair the gut, to maintain muscle. We have to have protein. 20 minutes of exercising per day, and then 15 minutes of stretching and or foam rolling, which is I'm a big fan of, every single day. I've got a video on my website of me doing my little foam rolling routine. It's kind of silly. It's just me on the floor doing my thing. So if you want to kind of follow along with that, it's easy to do. So that's it, guys. Sorry to run over. Got a little long-winded, so.
I have a question.
Sure.
You showed us 2 different prices. That's 2 different programs.
Yes.
Correct?
Yeah, the one is the gut repair and detox. That's
So you don't have to do that before you do the other.
no, you could do either or. We have some people that do both, but yeah, you could do either or. Hold on 1 second. Or you guys can bring the food in. Yeah, we're ready. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, ma'am. What's that? I'm sorry.
Second program that you talked about.
That 6-week metabolic reset, that's the ChiroThin. It's on that first page. If you look at the first page, it's that top one. Yes, ma'am.
So I just recently learned that it takes 2 years for the body to recover.
It can, unless you're supplementing with probiotics and doing fermented foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi, pickles, olives. Yeah, basically any kind of, what's that? Yeah.
How much of that do you have to take? So I've been septic and I was on a huge amount of antibiotics. And nobody told me.
Well, now if you're septic, you're going to need antibiotics.
Right. I And so I was on 10 days.
Yeah, it can be a year to 2 years before you can recover.
So if I'm taking probiotics,
Now, that's not necessarily the case if you're taking what you're taking. So you're probably in a little better spot than, you're going to wipe out the healthy bacteria when you're taking an antibiotic. That's going to happen. It's just how quickly can you replenish those. But eating those oh yeah. Yeah, I wanted to make a real quick announcement. Just real quick, this is a gift. This Ted and Shelly Tobins. So they have come to several events. How long have you guys been coming in? 2010. So I started here in 2007. So that's basically right along when I started. They have sent me, I can't even think of how many referrals they have sent. So they have set the bar really high in terms of referrals. They send all their coworkers and neighbors and friends. They're probably sick of hearing my name. So I wanted to take just a minute to kind of recognize them and give them a little gift, this little Whole Foods gift card. So I want to say thank you to you guys. Please give them a round of applause. Thanks, buddy. You're very welcome.
Anybody have top sheets that I can take? If I fill anything out? Yeah, you can put, yeah, and if you do the discount, and how long do they have for that?
It's 887.
Yeah, 887. Here, let me give you those numbers.
And me and Lee is both of them.
Okay, so
Yes.
I'll call you, what's a good number to call you? Okay, I'll call you
It's
tomorrow.
877.
Okay.
And the other one was 877 and then 1317.
$13.17.
1317.
It's 20%, right?
Yes, 20% off. Yeah, yeah.